Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming everyone. Sawadee Kap, welcome. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome to those of you that are here at the temple, and welcome to everyone who's joining us online. Today is our group learning program, and we're in chapter 2 of our text for this program. The text is called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is volume 1 of a book series that I share to help students to learn the teachings of the Buddha and develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. This chapter 2 is titled Why Study the Teachings of Gotama Buddha, and I share in there about why it's important to study the teachings of the Buddha. In today's class, we're going to start with meditation, and then we're going to move into a discussion, and you'll see how we do it. We do this class a little bit different than we do some of the other classes that I usually teach in the group learning program. But I'd like to welcome all of you guys, whether it's your first time joining or whether you've been joining regularly. Welcome to all of you guys. I'm going to start with meditation to help you guys learn meditation and do meditation. We start with breathing mindfulness meditation. And the way that we do our meditation is we ease into meditation with a chant. The chanting that I do, it's on a laminated sheet over there on the table that you're welcome to get a copy of if you like. The chants, you're welcome to get a copy if you like. They're in the Pali language. This is the original language of the source teachings of the Buddha. When you're doing chanting, it's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, or worship, or anything like that. It's not even prayer or anything like that. What the chanting's for is to help ease the mind into meditation. You get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to chant along, you're welcome to chant along. And for those of you guys online, this chanting sheet is on our website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com and you click on free books, you can go down to the bottom and you'll see that the chanting sheet is there. As I mentioned, these chants, they're not a rite, a ritual, or ceremony, or worship. It's not prayer. If you read the English translations, you'll see a lot of admiration and gratitude or respect for the Buddha. I suspect that the Buddha didn't actually create these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha doesn't walk around teaching people to chant things to them. That would be arrogance or ego, and the Buddha wouldn't have done that. Chanting during the lifetime of the Buddha was used in order to recite his teachings because he taught everything orally, and they needed to chant them every 2 weeks in order to commit them to memory, and this is how they would then practice the teachings. Nowadays, we read books, we have videos and podcasts and audiobooks and things like this, but during the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't have those things. The technology didn't exist. So he would teach orally, and then every 2 weeks, they would recite his teachings word for word for word, and that's where chanting came about. So it's helpful to know as you're chanting that there's nothing mystical or magical here. It's not prayer or worship or anything like that. Nowadays, I chant because it helps me to develop mindfulness and awareness of mind, awareness of the breath. It eases you into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. And some of the different programs that I teach students how to actually chant. But for today, we're just going to go ahead and chant and go into the meditation. Once we get into the meditation, I'll be providing some guidance while we're meditating so that you can understand how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then I will have this period of time where it's just quiet. I'm sure you'll hear maybe a dog barking, a bird chirping, maybe a car going past or something like this. But this is all impermanent sound. When you hear these things, just keep your mind focused on the breath. Keep bringing your mind back to the breath because it's not possible for you to meditate in an environment where it's permanently quiet. It's not possible for that. So if you don't have a craving for quietness, then you can remain peaceful and joyful and content without any kind of discontentedness, even if you hear a sound or something like that. So once we go through that period of time where it's just quiet, then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then in terms of your body position, usually students are learning in the seated position. This is very common, but there are other positions as well. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking positions, but seated position is very common for students to be learning in. You either sit on a floor, sit in a chair, sit on a bench, sit on a sofa. You can sit anywhere. If you're on the floor, I'll just give you a little bit of guidance, and I'll help you guys on the chairs as well. Essentially, if you're on the floor, you would like your legs to be lightly crossed. You're not interested in them being real tight because that would impede the circulation in the legs. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This helps to get the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allows the circulation to flow because you like the lower body to be nice and comfortable. You can really sit however you like. It's not about everybody sitting in exactly the same position. Just find something that's comfortable for you. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over over his left with his thumbs together. And if you would like to use this, you surely can. And the Buddha put this into his lap. But there's other options as well, because again, it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. You could put your hands on your thighs, on your knees, on your palms up. Some people like to just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. Essentially, the lower body and hands and arms should be completely relaxed and comfortable. And same thing goes for the people in chairs or on a sofa or a bench, wherever you're sitting at home. A lot of times people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles and then place their hands and arms wherever it's comfortable. And the same thing is even your legs and things like that. I've seen people sit in chairs, cross-legged, like I'm doing, sitting in this chair. So you can sit however you're comfortable. The upper body, it's helpful to keep it erect. By keeping the upper body erect, this keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation so that you can actively train the mind. It also helps you to breathe, because with your sternum up and your shoulders back, you'll be able to breathe easier into the lungs, in and out of the nose. So you can use these pointers if you like, but as I share, just do whatever's comfortable for you. So we'll go ahead and do meditation, and then we'll have some things to talk about afterwards. If you'd like to join in the chanting, feel free. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivatemi Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusana Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Focus the mind on the present moment, the breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thoughts, label them, judge them, analyze them, or even try to figure out where they're coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly ease your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys that are here. Welcome to those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to everyone online. Nice to see you all this morning. If this is your first time here to this temple, I'd like to just share a few things with you to help you be more comfortable. In the back of the room, the very last door on the right, there's a bathroom. Feel free to use it whenever you'd like. There's even bathrooms outside the classroom if you follow the main signs outside. It'll take you around to the main temple bathrooms, which you can use at any time. We even have water and some snacks are starting to show up that students are bringing. Feel free to help yourself and make yourself comfortable. The teachings of the Buddha, they're to help you to get to enlightenment. This is guidance that the Buddha shared that he used in order to get to enlightenment himself. And the guidance that he shares is to help you get to enlightenment as well. What enlightenment is where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. Feelings such as anger and sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. There are certain causes and conditions that are in your mind that are causing these feelings to arise. And when you understand what those things are and you apply the tools and techniques that the Buddha shared to uproot them, you can purify the mind of these causes and conditions, and these feelings will no longer continue to exist in the mind. You'll no longer experience the arising of these feelings. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, you will think that your anger is being caused by something external, or your frustration or your annoyance is being caused by something external, and you might blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. But this is just due to the lack of wisdom of not understanding the true reality of what's truly happening. The mind itself is causing these feelings. It's something called craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, wants, expectations, that when you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. And when you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance. The mind's craving permanence. It's wanting things to be a certain way permanently. And when it doesn't get what it wants, it feels those painful feelings. And what it'll typically do is attribute those to something external, and you will push the person away, or you will push the situation away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't solve the problem, because you just get agitated or annoyed over and over and over again. It's just a matter of time before something else occurs that you get angry or frustrated about. The other thing that can occur when you don't understand the real cause of the problem in your own mind, that it is your own mind, that you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards somebody through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is very common because the mind being polluted based on the pollutions that the Buddha discovered, it will be bitter and harsh and hostile towards others. And then the third thing that it'll do is it'll put its expectations on people, trying to control people and get people to do things your way. And the mind's thinking that this is going to solve your problem, because the mind's wanting things to be a certain way. And the mind thinks, if I push these people away or the situation away, that will solve the problem. But it doesn't, because you just get agitated again, or angry or frustrated. And if you're bitter and harsh and hostile with people, they choose to leave out of your life. It ends in broken relationships. And then the same thing when you put your expectations on people, you'll tend to try to control people. They'll feel pressured and they'll choose to leave out of your life. So in this situation, if you don't understand what the problem is and the cause of that problem, you'll stay stuck in this continuous cycle of experiencing the problems over and over and over again. And you won't be able to live with all beings harmoniously. But there's a solution. There's an escape to all of this, where the Buddha helps you understand how to train your mind, where you can uproot the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings. And then, having done so, you'll be able to eliminate them and experience the peace and joy that is the enlightened mind. You'll ultimately be able to live with all beings harmoniously. As you eliminate these pollutions of the mind, you'll experience focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. Your personal, professional relationships will really blossom, because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile to people. You're not pushing them away. You're not putting your expectations on people. You'll notice that life becomes much of like very easy, very straightforward, because in the unenlightened state, you will struggle. You'll have difficulties in life. Life will seem very challenging for you. So the Buddha didn't teach a bunch of rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. He didn't teach this mystical, magical things. He didn't teach a bunch of beliefs that if you believe these things, something good's going to happen when you die. He didn't teach you a bunch of rules and commandments, that this is the way the world should be. And if everybody follows these rules and commandments, then the world will become a peaceful place. This isn't what he actually did. What he did instead is he taught you the way the world is. He didn't teach you the way the world should be. He taught you the way the world is. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you will struggle. You'll have difficulties. So I refer to what the Buddha taught as the natural laws of existence. He taught these natural laws that you can understand the world around you. And when you understand the world around you with this wisdom, now you can navigate the world more readily. And the way that you get to wisdom is you learn his teachings. You investigate them. You examine them. Then you don't believe his teachings. You reflect on those to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice them to be able to see whether they're actually working as you integrate them into your life. Are they helping you to become more peaceful and more joyful person? And you'll see the truth for yourself with this wisdom, that these teachings explain the natural world around you. And then with this wisdom, you're more readily able to navigate the world. Because when you make wise decisions, you'll experience wholesome results. We refer to this as Gama, or wholesome Gama. You might have heard the word karma before. The word karma is the Sanskrit language referring to this natural law. Well, the original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so we use this word Gama. If it translated to just one English word, I would just use that word because it'd be much easier for everybody to use that word, but it doesn't translate to just one English word. What the word Gama is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. Again, it's not mystical or magical. It's not punishments and rewards. It's not even about who's at fault or who's to blame. There's no being or entity overseeing this natural law and deciding who gets what. It's your actual decisions that are leading to any particular result. that your decisions, if they're wise, they're going to produce wholesome karma or wholesome results. And if your decisions are unwise, they're going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. And when you have a lack of wisdom of this natural law, you're going to naturally make unwise decisions. Just because you don't understand what you don't understand, you're going to make unwise decisions. It's going to produce unwholesome results. And when things are coming back to you, you're confused about, why is this thing happening to me, right? Well, it's coming from your decisions, but you just can't see it. So what the Buddha is doing is he's helping you to awaken to the wisdom of this natural law. And you don't believe this natural law. You learn it, you reflect on it, and you practice it. And you see the truth for yourself, that as you gain more and more wisdom, you're making wiser and wiser decisions in the world, and you experience more and more wholesome results. And you can get to a point where you're not bitter and harsh and hostile. All your relationships are at ease, and life is just so straightforward for you. But again, with the lack of wisdom of this natural law, you're living in a world you don't understand, so you'll make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. And again, we typically blame other people for those unwholesome results that we're experiencing, when in reality it's coming from our own decision making, our own unwise decisions. And as long as we blame other people for the things that we experience, then we'll never solve our issues, because it's everyone else that's causing these unwholesome things to happen in my life. And if we don't cultivate wisdom, then we'll continue to make those same unwise decisions that produces these unwholesome results. So by gaining more and more wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing, and part of that practice is to train your own mind. By you training your mind and making wiser decisions, you'll experience improved results in your life. And part of those improved results is, as you're training your mind, you'll experience the peace, the calm, the serenity, the contentedness, the joy. You'll get to the point where all your relationships are at ease and they're really blossoming. You'll have that focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. So these are the teachings of the Buddha, just kind of a little bit in a nutshell, just kind of like a little bit of an introduction for you, because the teachings that the chapter that is for today's talk is chapter 2. And in this book that we use for our group learning program, it's titled, Why Study Gotama Buddha's Teachings? And in there, I help students to understand why it's important to study his teachings. Essentially, what the Buddha does is he provides you teachings to heal from what hurt you, so that you never need to hurt ever again. Because it's no fun experiencing painful feelings. We've all experienced those. But what I'm here to share with you is that you can get liberated from those. You can get freedom from those painful feelings. But you need the wisdom of how to do that. And in the unenlightened state, you don't know how to do that. And that's what a Buddha does, is they discover the teachings that it takes to be able to lead to this enlightened mental state. And I share in this chapter about helping students to understand why it's important for them to get to this enlightened mental state. Because in the unenlightened state, you can't even fathom how much peace and how much joy is in this enlightened mental state. Oftentimes, we just subject ourselves to thinking that this is the way that we're going to live, is that we're human, so we're going to be angry, we're going to be frustrated, we're going to have despair, we're going to have disappointment, we're going to feel guilty, we're going to feel shameful. But you don't have to feel those things. You can actually eliminate them. But most people in the world nowadays don't realize that those feelings are optional. You don't need to experience those feelings. You can actually eliminate them from the mind. But you need the wisdom to know how to do that. So you can heal from what hurt you, so that you never need to hurt again. But what's hurting you is actually within your own mind. It's not anything external. And this is why you can get to enlightenment, because you can train your own mind. But what we tend to do in the world when we misunderstand is we go out into the world and we try to change other people, and we try to get other people to do things our way. But there's only one person in the world that's ever going to do things your way. Do you guys know who that person is that's going to do things your way? There's only one person in the world that's going to do things your way. Do you know who that is? Yeah, it's you, right? Because not everyone's going to agree with you. Not everyone's going to do things your way. So if you can only be peaceful when people do things your way, you can only spend time with yourself. And even in that, sometimes people have difficulty spending time alone. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to get to the point where you feel peaceful, whether you're alone, whether you're with other people. What other people choose to do, it won't offend you. You won't be annoyed. You won't be frustrated. You won't feel disrespected. You won't have all those feelings circulating in your mind, and you can be at ease. But each individual person needs to choose to learn and practice and develop on the path to enlightenment. And it's a personal choice. A teacher's role is not to try to convince students to learn the path to enlightenment. That's why when we get to this chapter, in chapter 2, Why Study Gotama Buddha's Teachings, I don't even teach it, when we come to a class like this, normally I'm teaching something. I just gave you guys a little bit of an introduction because I know that many of you guys probably don't understand the teachings of the Buddha, or you haven't studied them before, and you haven't read this chapter perhaps because it's maybe your first time learning with me. But a teacher's role isn't to try to convince you to learn the teachings of the Buddha. It's up to each individual student to choose to learn. It's up to you to decide that you're done with anger. You're done with sadness. You're tired of feeling guilty and shameful and frustrated and having broken relationships and difficulties at work and in your personal life. And if you're done with all those difficulties and you would like to move beyond it, that's what the teachings of the Buddha are here for. And a teacher is like a tour guide. A teacher is pointing out to you the things you need to learn and grow and develop, but it's you that's doing the work. It's your own independent journey to enlightenment, with the teacher serving as a guide, as like a tour guide. So we provide the resources like books and audiobooks and videos, podcasts, classes, courses, retreats, personal guidance to be able to help you and things like this. But each individual student is on their own journey to enlightenment. So you can read the book and understand more detail about why I share that it's important to learn the teachings of the Buddha. But what I typically do in this particular class is, rather than try to teach you why to study the teachings of the Buddha, because I'm not interested in students thinking that I'm here to convince you to study, because that's not what I'm interested in doing. I'm interested in you choosing if you would like to learn, and if you choose to learn, then I will help you and I will guide you. But instead, what I do in this particular class is I turn it into a discussion where we can all have a discussion here at the temple. Those of you joining online, whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, we can have an open discussion about why is it that you've chosen to come and study the teachings of the Buddha? What is it that brought you to the temple? What is it that made you interested in even getting any kind of information about the teachings of the Buddha whatsoever? So if you guys would like to have that kind of discussion, that's usually what I do with today's class. For those of you guys here at the temple, if you guys would like to join into the discussion, we have microphones here in this white bowl. There's plenty of them that you guys can take and pass around and share. And there's people online that can join as well. And these microphones, there's a gray button on it that if you press the gray button, the lights come on and you hold it up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. And then, like I mentioned, if you'd like to keep it with you, you can share it around to the people that are around you, because we have plenty of microphones. And then for those of you guys on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom, you can share your thoughts by putting them into the comment section, and I'll read them here. But if you're in Zoom, you can actually electronically raise your hand. You can open up your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you on the live stream as well. So this is what I usually do with today's class. But I would like to share one thing with you before we actually open up to a discussion, because I'll let you guys warm up to the idea of having an open discussion, because oftentimes in the unenlightened state, there's kind of shyness and you don't want to kind of step out and kind of talk and discuss things publicly. But I encourage you to break through that shyness and go forward and actually share and talk if that's what you would like to do. But let me switch over to some visual aids here so that the people online and those of you guys here at the temple can see something that I'll share that is in this first chapter. In this first chapter, as part of it, I share that being in the human state is the ideal state to actually live and actually get to enlightenment. Because in the human state, you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. And being in this human state, you actually have the ability to develop your mind, to cultivate the mind, to gain wisdom, and move closer and closer to this peace and this joy. And being in the human state is the ideal existence, because you have this ability to actually get to enlightenment if you choose to do that. And the Buddha has some teachings here around this to help you understand how ideal it is to learn and practice in the human state. And this is a particular story that he shares, and I thought I would read it to you to be able to help you to understand how ideal it is to actually learn and practice from the human state. So here I'll read this. This is the actual words of the Buddha from the original teachings. The original teachings are collected in what's called the Pali Canon. There's 45 large volumes of books, and there is what's captured the teachings of the Buddha. And I share this book series, which is a consolidated version of that. There's 13 volumes here, and you can actually get this book series for free by downloading it from our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here at the temple by just reimbursing us for our printing cost, or you can order it on on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon, and that way you can have these books. But here, this is a Words of the Buddha from the second chapter that I've inserted in there. It's titled, Rare That One Obtains the Human State. So it's very rare for you to kind of come into this human state. Monks, suppose that this great earth had become one mass of water, and a man would throw a ring with a single hole upon it. An easterly wind would drive it westward, a westerly wind would drive it eastward, a northerly wind would drive it southward, a southerly wind would drive it northward. There was a blind turtle which would come to the surface once every 100 years. What do you think, monks? Would that blind turtle coming to the surface once every 100 years insert its neck into that ring with a single hole? It would be rare, venerable sir, that the blind turtle coming to the surface once every 100 years would insert its neck into that ring with a single hole. So too, monks, it is rare that one obtains the human state, rare that a Tathagata, that's a Buddha, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one, arises in the world. Rare that the teachings and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata shines in the world. You have obtained that human state, monks. A Tathagata, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one, has arisen in the world. The teachings and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata shines in the world. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand. This is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. So here what the Buddha is sharing is it's very rare to be able to come into this human state because, as I mentioned, from this human state, it's the ideal existence to be able to train your mind and get to enlightenment. And during his lifetime, it was very rare, and it's rare now, in order for someone to actually be a Buddha, to come into the world, because once a Buddha comes into the world, that's when the teachings really shine in such a way that you can actually truly get to enlightenment more easy than any other time during history. What a Buddha is they're an individual who's gotten to enlightenment on their own without the help of any teachers or any guides. So they have deep, profound wisdom of how to get to enlightenment. Once they get to enlightenment, they figured it out on their own. So they deeply understand what it takes to get to enlightenment. And then they declare throughout the rest of their life what are the teachings that led to their enlightenment, sharing with countless people, and countless people get to enlightenment. So from the age of 35 to 80, the Buddha shared his teachings of what it took to get to enlightenment for 45 years, and countless people got to enlightenment during that time frame. And then by the time he died, he preserved his teachings in such a way that countless more people got to enlightenment after that. These are the three criteria of what make a Buddha or a Tathagata. A Tathagata is the one who speaks the truth, or the one who's discovered the truth, or the one who shares the truth, right? So a Buddha is going to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing those independently discovered teachings with countless people, and then they preserve their teachings so that many other people can get to enlightenment after their death. So if you live during the lifetime of a Buddha, this is the ideal time to be able to get to enlightenment because the teachings are very profound and shining in the world. So not only is it rare to become a human, but it's very rare to become a human during the lifetime of an actual Buddha. And if you've accomplished that, then there's been certain wholesome results from your life that allowed you to get to that stage in your development, that you're now alive at a time when there's a Buddha. And now you can learn and cultivate and train your mind to be able to understand that wisdom and actually get to enlightenment. And the Buddha sums this up at the end where he says, okay, now that you've attained that human state and that there's a Buddha in the world and the teachings are shining in the world, you should make an effort to learn this is discontentedness. This is the cause of it. This is the elimination, and this is the path forward. This is the very first teaching of the Buddha. It's a summary. He's pointing to what's called the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is the very first teaching that you learn on the path to enlightenment. This is where you understand what is the problem in the mind. What the problem is in the unenlightened mind is discontentedness. The emotions, the mind going up and down and up and down. Emotion itself, it's not bad, it's not good. That's not what we're talking about. It's that when your mind is uncalm, it's unstable, it's shaken up, you can't make wise decisions because you don't have access to your wisdom. So when you allow your mind to be shaken up like that, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions that produces unwholesome results in your life. So that's the problem, the mind going up and down and up and down. The cause of this discontentedness, the cause of this problem is the craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning, thinking that something external is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction, chasing after the mind's desires, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. But to get to enlightenment, it doesn't mean that you eliminate your interest to pursue certain goals and objectives in your life. You can pursue goals and objectives in your life, but you just need to do it without longing, yearning, and thinking that this new thing is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So you might need a job. You might need a life partner. You might need clothes or food or money or shelter. You can pursue these things as goals, objectives. You might need to travel and see the world and do other things like this. But when you chase after it, when you long and yearn for it, you can only be happy when you get what you want. And then when you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. So the cause of these discontent feelings is the longing, yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. And you can train your mind to not do this. Where right now, maybe if it's sunny outside, you get happy. But then when it rains, maybe you're sad or you're frustrated. Or if your bank account is this, you're so happy. Yay, my bank account is this. But then when your bank account's this, you're sad or you're frustrated or you're agitated. Or if your mom and dad do this, you're happy. But then if your mom and dad do this, you're sad or you're frustrated or angry. Same thing with your brothers and sisters or other people in your life. So if you have all these wants and all these expectations and you can only be happy when those things are fulfilled, the longer your list is, the less and less happy you're going to be. So getting to enlightenment is to remove all of that stuff, is to understand that these are the cause of discontentedness is this longing and yearning, and that when you eliminate your cravings and your expectations and your wanting, you can actually be happy all the time. You can always be in a good mood when you remove the causes and conditions that are producing it. So the Buddha here is sharing, hey, study the Four Noble Truths. What is discontentedness? Meaning the problem in the mind. What is the cause of that? The craving, the desire, the attachment, the longing, the yearning, chasing after things, wanting things to be a certain way permanently all the time. The elimination of discontentedness is accomplished through eliminating craving, desire, attachment. And that's what this breathing mindfulness meditation is that we did today. This is helping you to eliminate your longing, yearning. Because when your mind moved off the breath and you cut that off and you brought it back, this is training your mind to let go. Because when you have craving, desire, attachment, and you're holding on to things very tightly, the mind doesn't know how to let go. And it wants things to be a certain way. And you can only be happy if you get things that way. So if you can train your mind to let go, then this is really helpful for your mind. So the goal of this meditation isn't to train your mind to eliminate your thoughts. It's to be able to help you to let go, to let go, to let go. So if 20, 30, 50 times during your meditation you had to let go, this is actually really good for your mind because it needs to be trained to let go. So you can use breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity in order to train your mind to let go. Because with a craving, desire, attachment in the mind, you'll be somewhat selfish and you'll hold on to things very tightly. So when you practice generosity where you're giving and sharing, your mind will be trained to let go. And this is very helpful for you. But it's the fourth noble truth that explains the complete solution, which is the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the complete solution. This is 8 individual steps that you learn and you practice and you develop. They're kind of like 8 individual dials. Like if you had a speaker system and you were trying to get a very good quality sound out of your speaker system, you would tweak these 8 dials and it would get a better and better sound out of the speaker system. So the same thing's true about your mind, is that when you understand this Eightfold Path and you dial it in closer and closer, you better get a better and better quality performing mind. And now you can do all the wonderful things in the world that you aspire to do. You can do all those wonderful things in the world, but you can do it with a calm mind and a peaceful mind and a joyful mind. You can be happy no matter what. Where right now, maybe if you go on a holiday or vacation, you can only be happy if things happen your way. where if things don't happen your way, maybe you're frustrated or agitated. Maybe you really want to go to Australia, or you really want to go to Indonesia or Thailand. And when you show up to the airport and all the flights are on time and you get to your destination on time, you're happy. But when you show up to the airport and your flights are delayed, maybe you're frustrated because you really want to go. You really want to go. Even a 30-minute delay, you might be really upset with that. Or a 3-hour delay, you might be really upset with that. But the thing is that this world is impermanent. It means that everything around you is constantly changing. All those flights can't permanently be on time. It's just not possible. We don't live in that world. It's a universal truth that things around us are constantly changing. But if you crave, if you desire, if you long and yearn for every single flight to be on time, when your flight's delayed, you'll be upset. You'll be frustrated. But your flight can't always be on time. It's not possible, right? So this is what the Buddha's teachings can help you to learn and grow and implement the tools and techniques to be able to accomplish that. So he's pointing to these Four Noble Truths because this is the very first teaching that helps you to establish what's called right view. When you establish right view, you understand that the discontentedness is being caused by your own mind, that it's not something external. And this is something I'll walk students through piece by piece when they first start. So 2 weeks from now, chapter 4, I'm going to be teaching step by step what the Four Noble Truths are, help you learn it, to reflect on it, to independently verify it, and practice it. And I've taught it other times too. It's been recorded. It's in the books and audiobooks. So if you'd like to learn it before, 2 weeks from now, you're welcome to do that. Or if you're not going to be here 2 weeks from now, you can join online. There's plenty of people who are joining online to join into the class, so you can do that as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn things over to all of you guys. You're welcome to share why it is that you're interested in studying the teachings of the Buddha. If you have questions about the teachings of the Buddha, you can ask those kinds of things. It's really just an open discussion because we just restarted this program about 6 weeks ago. And usually at this point in time, it's a good time for people to talk and get to know each other and get familiar with each other, get used to talking and asking questions. Again, those of you here at the temple, if you could use the microphones. Those of you online, if you could put your questions or your comments into the comment section, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So is there anybody here that would either like to share or have questions about anything that I've been sharing or anything that you've seen related to the teachings of the Buddha that you guys would like to talk about? Somebody would like to break the ice? Yeah, go ahead, Steve. You broke the ice yesterday too, I think.
Thank you, David. So I've been coming along a few weeks and starting to do this, and starting a little bit, following trying to follow your suggestions and guidance a little bit. So one thing that sort of arises is actually going through a stage of becoming more aware of these underlying discontentedness. So I didn't realize, for example, how much anger I carry with me, whereas before that was like a normal state of being. And like if I was going to for example, like a Western psychoanalyst, they'd say, well, let's examine that, what did mum do when you were 5 years old? What did that teacher do in grade 3? Blah, blah, blah. And you go through it. Oh, yeah. How do you balance? I mean, I in terms of becoming aware of these feelings, it comes up. Certainly, I fall back on the trying to practice a bit of meditation, and I find that helps. But where does that thing of trying to analyse, can that become a sort of a rabbit hole in its own right, to sort of go back and say, well, it was that nun in grade 3, which it was, but that's neither here nor there. Or you just say, I'm aware of the anger, meditate, let it go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what we tend to do when we lack wisdom of what's truly causing these feelings is we tend to look for who's at fault, who's to blame. And it's got to be somebody else besides me, right? Because the ego is in there thinking, I'm perfect. Everybody else is the problem, right? So this whole idea of fault and blame, this isn't part of the teachings of the Buddha at all, because every single being who has ever been born is unenlightened. Every single being that's ever been born is having these 10 pollutions that the Buddha discovered, which are the 10 fetters or pollutions or taints. So it's not about guilt or shame. It's not about who's at fault or who's to blame. It's just recognizing true reality that, hey, the mind is discontent. It's experiencing these discontent feelings, and that causes you to be shaken up. And now you make unwise decisions in the world, and it's producing unwholesome results for you. And by understanding that true reality and being able to investigate it and see the truth in it through walking through all the teachings, now when you understand what the true problem is and you understand the solution, when you implement that solution, it fixes the problem. Because going around blaming that nun from 3 years old or mom or dad or anybody else, it's not going to solve your problems. You're just going to stay angry. You're just going to stay frustrated. And you're stuck in this constant loop of blaming other people and things like this. So it's not even, don't even blame yourself for the feelings and the experiences that you're having, because every person who's ever been born is experiencing these things, but there is an escape. You can escape these things. So yes, it's learning, it's reflecting, it's practicing, it's applying the techniques. There's a certain amount of intellectual learning to understand the teachings of the Buddha, and that needs to happen. But then there's that reflection where you're looking to independently verify it. And I show students how to do that. And you've been in classes where I've done that. And then you start integrating the teachings into your life and start practicing them and gradually wearing away those pollutions. And that's where the peace and joy comes in. And when you're first starting the way you are, it can be pretty shocking to see your own mind and like, oh my goodness, I didn't know all that anger was in there. Oh my goodness, I was blaming all this on everybody else. But when it kind of like comes back and you start seeing that, oh my goodness, my mind is causing this kind of stuff, it can be pretty dumbfounding, right? It can be pretty dramatic, where you're like, oh my goodness, like, wow, like I can see that my mind is causing this. But the beauty in that is you can also see that I can eliminate it. Because my mind is actually causing these things, I can actually eliminate it too. Whereas if we kept blaming other people for the feelings that you experience, you wouldn't be able to solve that, because you can't train other people to do things your way, because there's 8 billion people in the world. You can train 8 billion people to do things your way, but you can train one mind. And this is the beauty when you're learning this. So yeah, it's a matter of learning the techniques, learning the path, applying it consistently in a dedicated fashion, and gradually wearing away these pollutions. And as you do, the brightness and the radiance of the enlightened mind shines through. Sometimes we talk about enlightenment as you need to attain enlightenment, like it's something you don't have, so you need to attain it. But another way to think about it is that you already have enlightenment. The mind's already enlightened. The natural state of the mind is enlightenment. And then you just need to clear the pollutions out of the way so the brightness and the radiance of the enlightened mind can shine through. And this is actually more akin to what you experience on your way to enlightenment. Because on your way to enlightenment, you can get a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months where your mind's quite peaceful and you're not experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. But then something triggers one of your cravings and boom, you got some discontentedness. So you can see that your mind, the natural state of the mind, is enlightened, but there's these pollutions in the way. It's kind of like there's a bright sun and then there's these clouds that are kind of inhibiting the sun from shining through. But when the clouds open up, the rays of the sun start shining through. And it's the same kind of thing, that as you clear this pollution out of your mind, the brightness and the radiance of the enlightened mind shines through. And this is where you can experience such peace and joy, and it'll be permanent. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's a permanent mental state. When you're enlightened, it's impossible for your mind to get angry. You just physically can't do it. Even if you tried to get angry, you just physically can't do it. You can't get frustrated. You can't get agitated, because the causes and conditions that produce those things have been eliminated from the mind. So the more you understand what the true problem is, which is what the Buddha brings your attention to, and you understand the solutions of how to fix it, and then you actually do that work, you'll see the results. This is why the Buddha, he never said, believe me. He said, come examine my teachings. Come investigate them. Because he knows if you investigate them close enough, you'll see the solutions. You'll see that it works. It's just a matter of time. Mm-hmm. Any other questions here online? Anything you guys would like to discuss? Yeah, Kushi.
Yeah. I can share my why, like how I started.
That'd be great.
Yeah, when you ask like why you started learning, and this thing first came to my mind, and I would like to share with all of you. So a little bit of background, like my name is Kushi, which means in Hindi it means happiness, and as while growing up, I was like, at one point, I was like, where is this permanent happiness? Because it doesn't stay. I am happy, but it's hard to like deal with world and to understand all the things, and it goes away. I cannot stay happy permanently, and how do I find this happiness? Because it was so deeply rooted that. I just wanted to know, like, how can I find this mental state? And I by then I was watching some meditation tutorials and things, and by what I perceived was people are like smiling and happy when they are meditating, and so I was interested to learn more, and I was first. Exposed to different kinds of Buddhism, like there is Mahayana Buddhism and stuff. So yeah, I learned, and it gave me a little bit of it. But then when I came here and learned like the original words, at first when I heard like all things are impermanent, I was questioning, no, that couldn't be true. Like, and I was seeing everything like why this is impermanent, why this is impermanent, because I have always believed that, okay, that was permanent, and how can all the feelings fit into just three categories, like pleasant, not pleasant, and neither pleasant nor painful? Like I was putting every feeling in those categories, and it was true, and it eventually unfold all the truths, and yeah, and it was really.
The microphone's impermanent too. There's the batteries that aren't working. We can get another one. We got plenty. There you go.
Yeah, so it was really beneficial to deal with people, to deal with world, and things become easier. And yeah, so I just continued doing that. There was many ups and downs, and yeah, I just left. There was certain time when I didn't meditate it too much, and life was hard again, and so I just try to come back every time, and so yeah.
So you've been learning and practicing now for about a year and a few months. What have you experienced in terms of, you're saying that you're verifying the teachings and you're seeing they're true. Has there been any other experiences, like in terms of the state of your mind or your relationships or anything like that, that you could comment on?
Yeah, surely. I used to be, I was a very angry person, like a short-tempered person, and I couldn't deal with things calmly, but as I'm learning more, that I can control my emotions more, and I can be out in the world and not take things so personally, and so it's just easier, and it's more earlier. Yeah, and when I meditate few times a day, it's easier for me to work and concentrate on things. And yeah, that's what I find.
Out of everything that you've experienced so far on the path, what was one of the biggest challenges that you experienced, and how'd you overcome it?
There was time like so there was time when I was going back home, and I have stayed here for a while, and I was practicing for a while, and I was hesitant that would I be able to practice, because in home environment there is a lot of attachment, and so it's a little bit challenging to practice. And so that was the time that my mind deteriorated a bit. Like I was down on meditation, and then coming back to the practice was a bit harder for me. But hearing all those words again and learning it again was just like the first time I was learning, because my mind just went down because I was not good at practicing things, because I was not having like right view. And so I just needed to do it all again. And I felt like, okay, I don't want to go through that phase again, that I want to relearn everything. So it just motivates me to go on.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Out of all the teachings of the Buddha that you've learned so far, what's the one that you feel like has been the most beneficial, the most impactful, produced the most results for you? And, what was that teaching, and how are the results that you've seen through implementing it?
So initially, the lesson that I'm seeing right now was the one inspired me a lot, that, okay, we have got this human state, and it's so like a blessing or a boon that we should practice more. And then another chapter that I was revisiting more times is a chapter called All Things Are Impermanent. And the Buddha goes through this analogy that this earth is impermanent, and all the water on the earth is impermanent. And so going through that, I just, the challenges that I was facing in my life, I could relate, like, okay, this is impermanent, this will pass by. And I would just go to read that chapter, and I would just be okay to let go. And so, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
See, this is great. Usually I sit up here and talk and teach, and they ask the questions. So now I get to ask all the questions. You guys can ask questions too, if you'd like to ask each other questions. It's just a discussion, right? Rex, you have something?
Yes, David, I do have a question. The body's impermanent. Mm-hmm. The mind is impermanent. What is the essence of a person or a self that is not impermanent? Is there, you want to talk about spirit or soul, or is there some other essence that is not impermanent regarding the self?
So what you're describing is what the unenlightened mind thinks, is that there is a self here and that this is permanent, but this isn't actually true. The Buddha teaches that there is no self. So there is a body, there is a mind, and these things have come together, and we refer to this as a person. So there's a person, there's a human being sitting here that I can see. But this body isn't you. Those clothes aren't you. That hair's not you. That skin is not you. None of those bones and fluid and organs and muscle tissue, none of that's you. So the unenlightened mind is holding on and clinging to this body, and it's clinging to this mind, thinking that this is who you are, wanting it to be permanent, but in reality it's not. And as long as the mind's clinging to this self-image and this self-identity, thinking this is who you are, when somebody says something agreeable to you about your physical appearance, you'll get pleasant feelings. If they say, wow, you're so handsome, or oh, you're so beautiful, or oh, that shirt brings out the color of your eyes, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so handsome, wow, you'll feel so great. But then because of impermanence, which Kushi was just talking about, it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging about this body or about your self-identity, like maybe about where you come from, right? Your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. If you adopt these things as who you are, like I am American, or I am Chinese, or I am Aussie, I am Australian. If you adopt any of these kinds of things in your mind, you'll get shaken up when people say something agreeable to you, you'll get pleasant feelings. When someone says something disagreeable about your nationality or sexual orientation or any of these other things, you'll get shaken up by that. And you can't control what other people say and what other people do. You can only control your own mind. So the Buddha gives this teaching of the universal truth of non-self that helps you understand that this body nor this mind is you. But the problem is that the mind in the unenlightened state is confused. It has misunderstanding and misperception. It's going to think that this body is you. So what this may be leading to is where the Buddha teaches the cycle of rebirth. And some people say, well, if there is no self and there is no you, then what is being reborn? Because even the cycle of rebirth is something that you can independently verify. You might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but you don't even believe the cycle of rebirth. You don't believe in the natural law of karma. You don't believe anything related to the teachings of the Buddha, because belief isn't going to get you to wisdom. With belief, you don't know what's true or false. You need to get to wisdom to be able to awaken, to get to the point where you understand these natural laws and you can get to this enlightened mental state. So people often say, well, if there is no self and there is no you, and this body is temporary and this mind is temporary, then what's being reborn? You're shaking your head. Yes, that's where you're going with this, right? Okay, so the word of the Buddha, when he talked about rebirth, what we refer to as rebirth, he used the word samsara. This is a Pali word, samsara. And all throughout the ages, we've been translating this as the cycle of rebirth, alluding to something being reborn. So people think that there's something that's permanent that keeps being reborn, like a soul or a spirit or something like this. But when you look at the original teachings of the Buddha and how he describes samsara, he's not describing rebirth. He's not describing anything that's being reborn. In fact, when he talks about his undeclared teachings, he says that he's not declaring whether there is a soul or there isn't a soul. Because the Buddha teaches all different kinds of teachings for 45 years. And there's a certain point in his teachings where he says, remember, monks, what did I teach? I taught this. He says, I taught what is discontentedness, the cause of discontentedness, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And he says, remember what I did not teach. I did not teach these things. And one of the things that he says is, I don't teach whether there is a soul or there isn't a soul. He left it as an undeclared teaching, because the idea of a soul, it conflicts with the universal truth of impermanence, and it conflicts with the universal truth of non-self. So we're using the terminology of translating samsara as the cycle of rebirth, but a better way to think about it is the cycle of new existence, because every single time it's a brand new existence. It's a brand new body. It's a brand new mind that is coming together for this existence. In this new mind, there can be residual memories from your past lives. There's cravings, desires, attachments from your past lives, and there's residual memories. And you can potentially independently verify this as you train your mind and you get more and more pollution out of your mind. You can oftentimes see and observe your past lives. You might even have had that experience already. If you know what deja vu is, oftentimes people experience deja vu where you're doing something right now and it's like, oh my God, this feels so familiar. I know I've done this before, but you know it wasn't in this life. This is some of your residual memories coming up into the mind. But this isn't a soul. This isn't anything permanent that's going from one life to the next. What it is residual memories. So let's just say Rex. We have Rex here. This is a body and a mind, and we're referring to this being as Rex. Let's say before this you were Susie, okay? And Susie had a certain mind. She got to the end of her life and she didn't get to enlightenment. So there was still pollution in her mind, namely craving, desire, attachment. That's the fuel that sends off the spark. And this produces the new mind. And now in this new mind, you have residual memories from your past lives. And this is where somebody, I know that this isn't describing you, Rex, but some people are transgender individuals, right? Where the body is of one gender and the mind is of a different gender. Because we've all been countless beings in the past, and we haven't necessarily been the same gender as this body. So a mind coming into this body, the body could be of a male or sexual organs, and the mind can identify as a female. This is completely normal, right? Or the body can be of a female sexual organs, and the mind can identify as a male. So this is how that occurs, is because of the cycle of new existence, that When there's a being prior to this that has certain cravings, desires, attachments, and certain residual memories, those get transferred into the new mind. And even though this new mind has found a certain gender of a body, it doesn't mean the mind identifies that way. So transgender individuals are completely normal. It's not a new thing. This has been occurring ever since the very beginning of time, that it's not possible for every single body that has male organs for the mind to identify it as a male. If that was true, we wouldn't have the universal truth of impermanence. Or if every single female body, if the mind identified as a female, that would be permanence. And we don't have that. We have the universal truth of impermanence. So the teachings of the Buddha explain the way the world is and why you see the things that you experience. Same thing with like same gender relationships. It's not possible for every man to be interested in having sex with a woman, or for every woman to be interested in having sex with a man. That would be permanence. Right? So we understand the universal truth of impermanence, that different people are going to choose different things, and that's completely normal and it's completely fine, and no one's causing harm to each other. And I know that I'm talking about sexual activity here, but I'm helping you to understand the cycle of rebirth and why these things occur, right? These things are occurring because of the cycle of rebirth, and it's completely normal. But with a lack of understanding of the cycle of rebirth, somebody might think that someone who prefers same-gender relationships, or someone who has a transgender identity or a non-binary, gender, they might think something's wrong here. But this is all completely normal. So I would encourage you to think about it as the cycle of new existence, that there's a new body and a new mind. There's nothing that's actually being reborn, but I still use the cycle of rebirth as terminology because that's what other people use, and it helps you to understand. But if you read my book, I explain I think it's the frequently asked questions section, about how I would advise people to think of it as the cycle of new existence, because that's the way the Buddha describes it. We're describing it and translating it as the cycle of rebirth. But that's, in my opinion, a misunderstanding, because this word samsara, there's nothing being reborn at all.
In fact, I have to ask, whether it be 10,000 lives or 100,000 lives or 1,000,000 lives, when that person reaches enlightenment, then the cycle stops. Mm-hmm. The rebirth stops. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, even that is impermanent. 100,000 lives, 1,000,000 lives. Eventually, if they reach enlightenment, then that stops. So that would be impermanent as well.
Exactly. Everything around you is impermanent, right? So there's what's called unconditioned objects. There's conditional objects. What a conditional object is it arises, it changes, and it fades away. And everything around you, everything you see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, and anything that goes through your mind, it's all a conditional object. It arises, changes, and fades away. The weather is impermanent. Your relationships, they're impermanent. Your bank account, it's impermanent. This physical body, it's impermanent. This class is impermanent. This carpet is impermanent. The temple wall is impermanent. Everything around you is impermanent. Anything you see, hear, smell, taste, anything that touches the body or anything that goes through the mind as a thought or an idea, it's all impermanent. These feelings that you experience, they're all impermanent. But there is something called an unconditioned object. Unconditioned objects, they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. The natural laws of existence that the Buddha taught, these are unconditioned. They don't arise, change, or fade away. That's why the teachings that the Buddha shared are timeless. What he shared 2,500 years ago applies today as well, because it's the same natural laws. His teachings aren't based on a cultural time frame that are kind of stuck in the past. That's not what the Buddha taught. He taught using language that is timeless, that applies during his lifetime, and it applies now because he's describing the natural laws, and these natural laws haven't actually changed. Now, people's memory and the books and all those kinds of things, those things are impermanent, and people lack certain wisdom of what he taught. But when you get back to the original teachings, you can see that his teachings are timeless. So these natural laws, they are permanent. They are unconditioned. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. And the same thing is true about enlightenment itself. It is a permanent mental state because it's unconditioned. The mind in the unenlightened state is conditioned. You have certain conditions that are causing it to be shaken up. But by the time you purify the mind of those conditions, you get to an unconditioned mind where the mind's been purified. And now the mental state of enlightenment is a permanent mental state. So the Buddha never said everything is impermanent. He said all conditioned objects are impermanent. And then he also taught unconditioned objects, that there's these things that don't arise, don't change, and don't fade away. So I will share, when I teach impermanence, that everything in the world is impermanent, because everything in the world that you see is impermanent. Everything you hear, smell, taste comes in contact with the body, and everything that goes through the mind. But there are things like the natural laws of existence that are permanent because they're unconditioned. Enlightenment is unconditioned. It's an unconditioned mind, so that is permanent. And then sometimes I talk about unconditional love, but I consider that to be part of the natural laws of existence, that unconditional love is permanent. Like, you didn't have to do anything to earn my love, so there's nothing I can do or you can do to fall out of love, right? So when we talk about falling in love and out of love, that's not actual love. That's not unconditional love. That's craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love. So unconditional love is permanent as well. It doesn't arise, change, or fade away. Mm-hmm. Great questions, great conversation. What else would you guys like to talk about? Yes, sir.
Hi, good morning. My name is Christopher. Thank you so much for this. Mm-hmm. My question is, what's the relationship between meditation, like what we're learning, and what's popularly known as like mindfulness? And then how are those used in what you're describing as the path to enlightenment?
Sure, this is a great question. All your questions are great. So what mindfulness is, in general, is awareness of mind, where you just have awareness of your mind. That's the general way, the simple way to think about mindfulness. But more specifically, it goes into what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The 4 foundations of mindfulness are 4 things that you need to be aware of. And the Buddha is actually teaching you the life cycle that these discontent feelings are going to go through, so that you understand what's occurring, so you can take action to fix it. So if you think about mindfulness as general awareness, not everybody uses this word mindfulness that way because of impermanence. You'll hear people that'll say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? What they're really saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table, right? If you look at what the Buddha taught, he taught awareness of mind as mindfulness, because in order to get to this purified mind, you need to have awareness of the mind and what's going on in the mind. In the unenlightened state, we typically don't have awareness of mind. We typically go through the world pursuing our own selfish desires, knocking down the trees, burning up the forest, just interested in our own selfish desires, not really thinking or caring about what's going on in your own mind and how you're affecting other people around you. But what the Buddha is helping you to develop is this awareness of mind, so that you can be aware of how your decisions impact you and they impact other people too. And you need to be aware of what's going on in your mind. And the meditation is helping you to develop that, so that you can be aware that when you're focused on the breath, if you get out of meditation today and you're like, oh my goodness, my mind is so busy, that's you having mindfulness. You're aware of what's going on in your mind. And now you can train it to be not so busy, to be quiet and still. So you're going to need this mindfulness to be developed in meditation, but then you're going to need to practice it in daily life, so that as you're going about your day, you're aware of what's going on in your mind. That if you see anger coming up, you know that it's not from somebody else, it's from your own mind. That if you feel annoyed or disappointed, or you feel guilty or shameful, or you have negative self-talk in your mind, you need to be aware of that so you can take action to fix it. And this is where the 4 foundations of mindfulness come in. What the 4 foundations of mindfulness are is there's these bodily sensations, there's feelings, there's the condition of the mind, and then there's the mental objects. I'll explain to you guys what these are. What the Buddha is describing to you is the life cycle that discontentedness is going to take as you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind. You're wanting things to be a certain way. You're going to experience contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself. And with your cravings, you're going to want things to be a certain way permanently. You're going to want permanence. You're going to crave permanence. And when you get what you want, there's going to be these pleasant feelings that arise. But before that, there's bodily sensations, right? If you don't get what you want, if you have contact through your your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, your body, or your mind, if you experience contact and it's not what you want, it's disagreeable to you, you will experience painful feelings, right? So like, let's just say you're walking down the street, you see a parent and a child holding hands, and you're like, that's so sweet. Oh, it's so lovely. And you get all these pleasant feelings. Well, before that, there was these bodily sensations. But let's just say you were walking down the street and you saw a parent slap their child across the face. Maybe this is disagreeable to you, and you're going to get painful feelings from that: anger, sadness, frustration. Well, before those feelings, there was bodily sensations. Before you get angry, before you get frustrated, maybe you felt this tingling in the body, maybe some tightening in the chest, maybe some pain around the heart, maybe tightening in the throat, maybe heat in the face or pressure in the skull. You know what I'm talking about? You experienced these things before, right? Where you have these bodily sensations. This is the first foundation of mindfulness. You need to be aware of these bodily sensations, because this is an early warning system alerting you that, hey, you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. You're about to get annoyed. You're about to feel guilty. You're about to feel lonely and bored or shy or some other discontent feeling. And you can actually take action at the bodily sensations if you've been training your mind in meditation to cut off and let go, and cut off and let go. And you've been training generosity to give and share. You can train your mind to let go, because in a given situation where you experience contact through the six sense bases, and it's either agreeable or disagreeable to you, if you can clue into those bodily sensations arising, you can train the mind. You can rewire the mind to not form a conditioned feeling. What a conditioned feeling is where you're forming your inner feelings on some external object or some kind of thing. And as long as you keep allowing your mind to form inner feelings based on something, then now when you experience that pleasant feeling because it's so sunny outside and you feel so pleasant, and wow, I've just based my inner feeling of happiness on the sun, well, your feeling of happiness is impermanent, because the sun is impermanent. So when you base your inner feelings on the sun, now your feeling of happiness is impermanent. Or if you base your inner feelings on your bank account, now your feeling of happiness is impermanent, because your bank account's going to go up and down. So if you can see these pleasant feelings that are conditional, the pleasant feelings, the painful feelings, and the neither painful nor pleasant, you can rewire the mind if you cut it off as a bodily sensation. This isn't suppressing your thoughts or suppressing your feelings. It's cutting them off before they've ever become a conditioned feeling, so that you can get to the unconditioned happiness, where your mind can just be happy all the time. But as long as your mind's forming conditional happiness, you can't get to unconditional happiness, because the mind in the unenlightened state is forming these conditioned feelings, that it's basing its inner feelings on some condition. So if you can stop the mind, if you can retrain the mind to no longer form these conditional feelings, you can get to the unconditioned happiness. So the bodily sensations are going to be first, and you can take action there to cut it off and let it go. But you'll miss it because your mind's not fully developed at this point, and then it'll become a feeling. And now this is like the water's rushing into the boat, and now you got to hurry up and get the water out of the boat. And you're not really interested in that. That's why you'd like to cut it off as a bodily sensation. But okay, if the water's coming into the boat, let's get the water out. We've got a real problem to deal with. Let's get it out. So you can cut it off and let it go as a feeling too. But if you don't, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. This is the third foundation of mindfulness. The condition of your mind is like, for the next few minutes, the next few hours, the next few days, you're agitated, you're annoyed, you're frustrated. You've experienced that, right? Where you've been angry for a week or two over something that happened. Your mind's generally agitated or annoyed or frustrated or other discontent feelings. And then if you don't eliminate it there, it forms and it feeds what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. In the 10 fetters or the 10 pollutions that the Buddha discovered, these are the mental objects. And you need to break these up. And this is how you purify the mind, is get rid of these mental objects. So these bodily sensations, feelings, condition of the mind, and mental objects is the life cycle that the Buddha is alerting you to of what's going on in your mind. And now with that wisdom, you can actually use his tools and techniques to take action, to fix it. Whereas if you didn't understand that this is what was going on and these are the natural laws, if you didn't understand this was occurring, you wouldn't even know. And you're just going to keep allowing your mind to get angry over and over and over again. As long as your mind stays wired to be angry and you dwell in those angry feelings and those frustrated feelings, your mind will keep doing that over and over and over and over and over again. But if you understand the process of what's happening and you can rewire the mind, you can get to a point where you don't experience these discontent feelings anymore. But you need to understand it intellectually first, and then you need to reflect on it, independently verify that what I'm sharing with you is true, and then you need to practice it. So the meditation is helping you to develop your mindfulness and the ability to cut off and let go during daily life, so that if you are driving in a car and somebody cuts you off and you feel the anger getting, no, I'm not going to let the mind do that. You cut it off and let it go, right? Because you understand that this lane is not permanent. I cannot drive in this lane permanently with nobody around me. This is not possible. That some people, they change lanes and give you lots of space. Other people don't. That's impermanence. And you can't control what other people do. You can only control your own mind to not crave permanence. But if you crave permanence, when somebody comes too close to you, you'll get angry, you'll get frustrated. So you can train your mind to not allow the mind to do that. When you experience the bodily sensation, you can cut it off and let it go. And eventually, when you eliminate all your cravings, desires, attachments, those things will never happen. So by the time you get to enlightenment, all the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings to arise have been eliminated. So there's no anger that arises. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. Okay, have the lane. It's yours. I'm going to ease off the accelerator because this guy is obviously making unwise decisions. So I'm not interested in being around someone who makes unwise decisions. So I'm going to ease off the accelerator and let them have the lane. Go for it, buddy, or gal or girl or whoever you are. Go ahead. You can have the lane, right? So you'll make wiser decisions where if you have ego, if you have craving, you'll honk the horn, you'll buzz the horn, you'll get close to them, you'll give them the middle finger, and you'll stop your car, get out your baseball bat and start breaking their window or whatever someone might do, right? This is because of the craving, the anger, the lack of wisdom, the ego, and all these things are driving somebody to make unskillful decisions. But when your mind's calm, and you've purified your mind, you can make skillful decisions that won't produce unwholesome results for you. Because in that scenario where you attack this person either verbally or with your bodily actions, harm's going to come back to you. When you're making unwise decisions and unskillful decisions, you're making these unwise decisions, and unwholesome karma is going to come back to you because of that, either in that moment or at some other point. Yeah, great question. Does that help you? Yeah, good. Yeah, it's good that you're seeing the connection between meditation and mindfulness and what you need to do in daily life. This is so key. This is part of what the Eightfold Path is helping you to understand. So we have various courses and retreats and programs that walk you through all these foundational classes and courses to be able to help you develop a foundation in the teachings. Okay, so it looks like, Pat, you have something you'd like to share, or a question perhaps?
A question. Yesterday in the Facebook group, somebody asked what you teach and what the other 90% of Buddhists teach here in Thailand. What's the difference with those?
Did somebody ask that? I didn't see that.
Well, you answered.
Oh, did I?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't recall that at all.
It was a good answer, too.
Was it? So it was that, like, say the question again?
They're asking what the difference is between what you teach and what the other Buddhists with rites, rituals, and ceremonies are teaching out here in Thailand.
Really? This must have been a question from a long time ago.
It might have.
Yeah, you might look at the date, but otherwise, I can answer that question for you. Okay, so the Buddha lived over 2,500 years ago. And now we're 2,500 years later, right? So what he taught and what some people teach is oftentimes very different. And that's why it's so important to go back to the original words of the Buddha to be able to see what he taught and what he didn't teach. Depending on where you've been in the Buddhist world, you might see rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship. You might see prayer. You might see people feeding statues and worshiping statues. You might see all kinds of things, different beliefs that people are talking about. But the Buddha never taught any beliefs. He never taught rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. He never taught any of this kind of stuff. But because we're 2,500 years after his death, a lot of people have gotten really far away from his teachings because they lived as an oral tradition during the lifetime of the Buddha. And as an oral tradition, it's very easy for things to change, either overtly, people changing them, or inadvertently. People can just accidentally be changing because people's memory from one person to the next. If you've ever played that game where people line up and you say, the pink elephant ate the gray squirrel, and then people whispered, and by the time you get around, it's like the yellow tiger, grabbed the green lizard, right? It's like the story changes all the way around. And it's the same thing that happens when you have an oral tradition. So either people overtly changed his teachings for 2,500 years, or people inadvertently. There was a combination of both of these things that were occurring, right? So nowadays, 2,500 years later, you have all this whole litany of different things that people are teaching and sharing and attributing to the Buddha. But if you go back to his original teachings and you don't believe anything that I share with you, you don't believe anything that's in the books or other resources, or that anybody else shares with you. Don't believe, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. Instead, you learn, you reflect, and you practice, and you get to wisdom. If you get to wisdom, you'll know what's true and you'll know what's false. And then you'll know for yourself, as your mind's becoming more and more peaceful, more and more joyful, you're implementing these techniques, you'll know that these teachings are true. So what I'm teaching is I'm teaching based on the original words of the Buddha, and I invite people to not believe anything that I share with them. And I don't do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship because it doesn't lead to wisdom. These things are all based in belief. And in order for you to get benefit, you're going to need to get to wisdom. So I don't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. I don't teach anything mystical or magical. There's no superstition. It's not about fortune telling. It's not about changing other people. It's about improving the condition of your own mind. And as you do that, you'll see the results. But oftentimes, depending on what community you go to, you'll see these kinds of things. There are communities here in Thailand that are interested in the original teachings of the Buddha, and they study the original teachings of the Buddha. There's enlightened ordained practitioners, there's enlightened household practitioners, but you don't necessarily know where those places are. And even if you did, they're speaking in Thai, so you wouldn't be able to benefit from those if you don't speak Thai. So different people all throughout the world will be teaching different things. For me, I don't even think about it as I am teaching Buddhism or I am teaching Theravada Buddhism, because this is a label that means different things to different people. The Buddhist teachings aren't a religion. They're not rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. There's not one person at the top that's disseminating teachings to everybody. It's not about rules and commandments and things like this. I don't even think of it as I'm teaching Buddhism. I think of it as these are the teachings of the Buddha, this better way of life that he discovered. I'm teaching the path that he taught. And he didn't refer to what he taught as Buddhism. The Buddha didn't refer to himself as a Buddhist, right? The Buddha himself was not a Buddhist, right? You understand that? Like, that's just a label that people have come up with today that says, I am a Buddhist. I don't even have that label in my mind that I am a Buddhist. I'm just practicing the teachings of the Buddha. I'm sharing the teachings of the Buddha and helping people to understand that path, this better way of life. So that's what I do. Mm-hmm. You have a question, ma'am, or something you'd like to share?
I want to ask a problem, my problem.
Sure.
And I always be strict with myself. I just make a high goal for me and try to achieve that. Just like if my leader, he gave me a hard job and I don't want to argue with him, I just spend more time doing that. And if I just want to become an excellent person of my friend, and if I don't do something right or don't achieve my goal, I feel very unsafe, and I maybe think I shouldn't sleep, just need to work hard and to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so many times I feel unsafe and guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my problem.
Okay. So whenever you have any discontent feelings like guilt, this is coming from craving, desire, attachment. This is the wants, the expectations. Like you want this thing to occur. And if it occurs, you'll feel happy. But when it doesn't, you feel guilty or shameful. This is because of the craving. So even though you're using the word goal, it's not truly a goal. What a goal is an objective that if you obtain it, wonderful. And if you don't attain it, that's fine too. And you just adjust your goal's timeline, or you adjust the goal itself, and you gradually work towards it. This is something you aspire for. But what people tend to do in the unenlightened state, because the mind doesn't know how to function any other way but through its cravings, is that you chase it and you want it and you pursue it and you're longing and you're yearning. And if you get it, you'll be happy. And if you don't get it, you'll feel guilt or shame or fear or stress or anxiety or some other discontent feeling. So what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is learning how to not live on this side of the world where you're chasing things, but you're also not living on this side of the world where you're indifferent and you could care less about what happens in your life or in the world. Instead, you come to the middle where you gradually pursue things as a goal, as an objective, or an interest. And that's where your mind can be peaceful. So if you have certain work projects where your boss or you yourself, if you're self-employed, have set certain goals, understand that as soon as you set that goal, you may or may not accomplish that. Because of impermanence, it's not possible for you to accomplish every single thing that you set out to do. But that's what the mind wants when it has craving, desire, attachment, is it wants every single thing to go exactly my way. That's the craving, desire, attachment. Or the unenlightened mind will live on the other side where it's indifferent and there's complacency and there's dullness and there's lethargic. That's what the unenlightened mind does, is it swings back and forth from side to side. It doesn't know how to live in this middle way that the Buddha taught, this better way of life, that you pursue things gradually, slowly but surely. And then as you're gradually working towards something, then if you make it, great. But I don't need to get all excited because of that. It's just like, okay, I accomplished what it is I would like to accomplish. But if I haven't accomplished what I'm interested in accomplishing, then I need to sit down and look at this and say, okay, do I need to adjust my timeline, or do I need to adjust the goal itself? Maybe the goal was too high. Maybe I need to bring it down a little bit, right? So you're going to need to understand that when you start a work project, that don't crave it, don't long for it, don't yearn for it, but also don't live over here where you're indifferent and you're complacent and you could care less, that you just gradually work towards it. And now as you're gradually working towards it, say you set a goal of something to accomplish in 4 weeks from now. If you get 4 weeks down the road and you haven't accomplished that, no need to feel guilty or shameful. Just look at the situation. Okay, I accomplished 80% of it, so let me extend my timeline for another 2 weeks, and then I can accomplish the full thing. But you don't have to feel guilty or shameful because you didn't do it in a certain time frame. But this is what the unenlightened mind will do because of its cravings, desires, attachments. So you're going to need to adjust your thinking to understand that anytime you take on a goal or objective, that you may or may not achieve it. And this is common because of impermanence. It's not possible to permanently obtain every single goal in exactly the way you want, in exactly the time frame that you want. It's just not possible. But that's what the unenlightened mind is going to want. So you got to train it to not do that. And setting that up in your mind when you first start with a project is important. But then also using the meditations of breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing generosity will train your mind to let go as well. And then you can just pursue things through wise decision making rather than chasing it or rather than being indifferent.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Looks like online's been pretty quiet. Oh, yes, ma'am. You have a question? Or
Hi, David.
comment?
This is Queenie, and this is my first time here to attend the Buddha class, and it's very inspiring what you and others have been saying. The unconditioned things are always impermanent and causing our pain and angers, etc. But then my question would be, is it necessary to entitle things in the world a meaning? Because often the time in the real world, we actually entitle things meanings, like I want to achieve this because this would help the company gain profit, or we want to achieve this goal as a team. This often brings us joyfulness and happiness when we achieve that, and anger and depressions when we don't get that. But then it also gives the meanings, give us motivations to pursue these things. I'm not quite sure if this is good or not, but when I have friends with depression, the bad emotions, and they say the depression is actually not feel unhappy, but it's that they feel they have no motivation to do things. So I want to ask if then we accept the concept that all the unconditioned things are impermanent. And does it mean like everything in the world actually does not have a meaning and it's not worthy of us to pursue them and pay our, emotions? That's my question.
Okay. So the conditioned objects are impermanent. Conditioned objects. Unconditioned objects are impermanent. Conditioned objects are impermanent. Unconditioned objects are permanent, right? And there's very few unconditioned objects like enlightenment, the natural laws of existence. So one of the important things on the path to enlightenment is to understand vocabulary and how oftentimes in the unenlightened state we use words in ways that they're not really intended to be used. This is one of the things I needed to do, is I needed to deeply understand vocabulary and how words are being used. That we oftentimes talk about goals and objectives, but really what these are cravings, desires, attachments. That's how people are adopting them. What I'm sharing that a true objective is that you can maintain your contentedness whether you get this thing or you don't. It's a goal. It's an objective. It's something that you aspire for and you're gradually working towards, and you can be fine whether you achieve that thing or not. That's a true goal, objective, or interest. But what people are referring to as a goal, objective, or interest is actually a craving, desire, attachment. It's a longing, it's a yearning, it's wanting things to be a certain way, and I can only be happy if I get what I want. That's not a goal, that's a craving, desire, attachment. So this is going to produce dissatisfaction in an individual's mind, because as you set goals and you work towards them, you're not going to be able to get to them all. So this isn't a goal. It's a craving, desire, attachment. So you're not going to be able to get to those cravings, desires, attachments. So you're going to feel sad and you're going to feel depressed if you have set all these different goals and you're not able to accomplish them. And you're not going to be able to accomplish all these things. So that's why a true goal, a true objective, is that you can maintain your contentedness and your peace and your joy regardless of whether you obtain that thing or not. And you just gradually work towards it. It's like a target that you're working towards, and you may not hit the target, but you're going to gradually work towards hitting that target more and more. But if you can only be happy when your cravings, desires, attachments are fulfilled, then you get to that point where you're either there, where you're only motivated based on your cravings, desires, attachments, or you're on the other side where you lack motivation. You don't have enthusiasm, you don't have ambition, you're indifferent, like you were talking about, like your friends just don't want to do anything. This is what the unenlightened mind does, is it is either here where it's pursuing its wants, or it's over here where it just doesn't want to do anything. It's dull and lethargic. And on either side, you can't be peaceful. You can't be joyful. You can only be peaceful when you come to the middle way. So if you're pursuing things out of craving, desire, attachment, which the unenlightened mind is doing, you can feel, as you're starting to strip away your craving, desire, attachment, you can feel like life is meaningless because you've been pursuing things your whole life out of craving, desire, attachment, and the mind doesn't know how to motivate itself to do something unless it's based in craving, desire, attachment. So oftentimes as you're training your mind on this path, as you're letting go of your cravings, desires, attachments, the mind will swing to the other side of indifference and dullness and lethargic, because it's not going to let go of cravings and come right to the middle where you can be peaceful. It's going to overshoot that. And now you're going to be over here where you don't feel good there either. But slowly but surely, like a pendulum, it comes to the middle, and now you come to the middle and you experience what that's like. And now you get more and more comfortable making wise decisions. So for example, like I'm interested in sharing these teachings of the Buddha. I have a goal. I have an objective to restore the teachings of the Buddha back into the world in such a way that countless people can get to enlightenment, right? But I don't crave it. I don't want it. I don't expect it. So if I'm on my way here and I get a flat tire on my motorbike and I just can't get to the temple and there's 20 people here and they're waiting outside, okay, that's impermanence. I'm not going to be able to make every single class. I think in the last 6 years that I've been teaching, I've maybe missed maybe 1 or 2 or 3 classes at most because I have an interest to come here. I'm making wise decisions because I know it's helpful for people. But if for some reason I can't come here, I'm not upset. I'm not angry. I'm not frustrated. I got sick a few weeks ago and I couldn't teach a particular class. I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I just understand this body is impermanent and it can't be permanently healthy. So there's no craving to share these teachings, so I can be peaceful and joyful regardless of what's going on. But the mind in the unenlightened state doesn't know how to do that. So life can feel somewhat meaningless and worthless. But you can get to a point where you understand what a true goal is, what a true objective is. You understand what wise decision making is. And now you just gradually work towards your goals, objectives, or interests, like what I'm doing. Like I've wrote all these books. I've made all these videos, I've done all these podcasts, I've done all these audiobooks and all these different things, and I'm just gradually building up all these teachings to be able to help people to understand what they are. But if I did that in craving, I could only be happy if certain things occurred. But if I was indifferent and I could care less what was going on, then I wouldn't help anybody. So I can come to the middle where I just gradually work towards these things. And you can accomplish the same thing in your life, whether it's your personal relationships or your professional relationships, you can gradually do these things. But the mind doesn't know how to do that in the unenlightened state. And that's what part of this training is doing, is learning how to live this better way of life and get your mind to the point where it can pursue things as wise decisions rather than through its cravings. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else you guys would like to talk about? Okay, yeah, Pat.
Go back a couple of questions to this young lady. Mm-hmm. I understand, that I'm on a path, which eventually will hopefully lead to enlightenment or close to it. Mm-hmm. I understand impermanence, but I think her question was her boss has given her a task to do, mm-hmm. and she wants to fulfill that task. Mm-hmm. Understanding impermanence, knowing that maybe it can be fulfilled, maybe it can't, but the boss doesn't mm-hmm. understand impermanence. Mm-hmm. How do you resolve that issue?
Yeah, so this is where you understanding impermanence and having the wisdom, if you see your boss as having this craving, this desire, this longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way, you can kind of wisely speak in skillful ways to help boss to understand these kinds of things. But you're not going to sit down and say, hey, the Buddha taught this and the Buddha taught that, and he taught us not to crave and cling. You're not going to use the B word, right? Instead, you're going to be like, okay, boss, I understand you would like me to get this done in 4 weeks. What happens if I don't get it done in 4 weeks? And they're like, okay, this, that, or the other thing. Okay, I understand. So it absolutely has to be done in 4 weeks. Are there additional resources that I can use here? Because me doing it myself, I don't know that I can get it done in 4 weeks, right? So you're going to need to help them to be able to understand what it is that they're craving, that they're desiring, and then make sure that you have what you need, and then don't allow the expectation to form in your own mind that you're craving, that you're desiring, that you're attached, but you gradually work towards this particular goal. So there's skillful ways to talk with boss and make sure that boss understands where you are with this and that you're going to gradually work towards it. And you're going to do everything you can to make it, but you may need some extra resources, you may need some extra time and these kinds of things, and you would like to see where the flexibility might be in either more time or more resources, or so be it. Those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So it's about 11 o'clock. This is usually where we end our class, but I just would like to see if there's any other questions that you guys might have. I see the people online are fairly quiet today, but I see all of you guys there. Anything else you guys would like to talk about or ask questions about? No? Okay, so what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining and invite you to come back to learn some more. Next week in our Sunday class, I'm going to be in Chapter 3. What Chapter 3 is enlightenment. What is enlightenment? This is the beginning of the real core of the book, where I'm going to be teaching you what enlightenment is and what it isn't, and explaining to you the stages of enlightenment, how the mind moves through enlightenment. And I'm going to explain to you the 10 fetters, which are the 10 pollutions that are hindering the mind from experiencing enlightenment. enlightenment. So after that discussion, you understand what enlightenment is a lot better, because here at the beginning of the book, what I do is I help you understand the goal, the objective. Because if you were going to be interested in traveling to a place like Chiang Rai, your first questions would be like, well, what is Chiang Rai like? What is there? What am I going to do when I get there? What kinds of things can I experience when I get there? You'd like to know, am I even interested to travel to the city called Chiang Rai? So by understanding what enlightenment is, you'll understand whether or not it's even something that you would like to progress towards. So that's why I shared as chapter 3 in this book, so you'll understand the goal, objective, and interest, and whether it's even a journey that you would like to actually take, because oftentimes people don't even understand what enlightenment is. And if you don't understand what it is, how could you ever make a decision whether or not you'd be interested to attain it? So that's going to be on Sunday. This Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching the third part of a 4-part series, which is called Loving Kindness Meditation. So if you'd like to come on Wednesday at 9 a.m. or you attend online, this is where I'm going to be teaching and sharing loving kindness meditation and opening up to any questions that you guys might have. And then we have various courses and retreats and fun events and things like this. This Friday, we have a game night. If you'd like to come on Friday at 6 p.m., we all get together and we play games and socialize, and we share some food and things like that. So if you'd like to come here on Friday at 6 p.m., we have that. You can see all these different events on the calendar over there on the bulletin board, or if you're on the website, you'll see them on there as well, because a lot of these events, they're pretty much all live streamed. The game night, we don't live stream, but pretty much everything else we do. So you're welcome to come to anything that you see that we're doing, whether it's here at the temple or anywhere else. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn. And perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a lovely rest of your day. Sawadee khap, sawadee khap, sawadee khap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.